McLanathan.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Busker is absent. Brashaw.
Here.
Keister.
Here.
And Berberay.
Here.
And if you could please stand and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Alderman Ross.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alderman Ross, the meeting's yours.
Okay, we can start with the approval of the agenda.
So move. Second.
We have a by Keister, and second by Alderman Parker. Approval of the minutes from the,
You have to do a vote on that, or a voice vote for the approval of the agenda.
okay. Yeah, all in favor, please signify and say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approve a minute for the committee of the whole meeting on, today. Public comments. At this time, we have no public comment.
No, wait, back up a minute, Art. You have a approval of the minutes, and you need a first, a second, and then a voice vote.
Oh, okay.
Chair? Chair?
Yes.
I'd move to approve the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on March 11, 2019.
Second.
The minutes have been approved by Alderman McLanathan and second by Alderman Parker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Beautiful. Public comments. Any public comments? No one has signed in on the sheet. There will be no public comments at this time. Okay, discussion regarding design of the water treatment plant, presented by Adam Holder from Fair and Grand, Scott Winter from Winter and Associates, and Director Utilities, Operator Tom.
Okay, thank you, everyone. What the discussion will take place tonight is for the water treatment plant over at the Fields of Freeport. We'll just be discussing this one. The one over at Willow will be at another time. So the first slide the next slide I want to bring up. No. Which one? How about the PDFs? Sure. Okay, that'll work, thank you. Okay, so the first image that you see is a rendering of the front of the treatment plant. This will be over at the Fields of Freeport. What that will be is that will be the main administrative complex, while the water plant, the water operators will be stationed out there. And this will be a state-of-the-art plant. We're going to be having a well dug, roughly 1,300 feet deep, and it will run through two treatment plants that are manufactured by Tonka. They're called dualators, and it will provide a good and better quality of water. We're going to have a much better quality, this being on the western side of town, where we have had challenges with our water treatment plant from the 1880s, where we have been and we're transitioning to over there. The next slide is just some side views from various angles. And here's more looking from overhead on down.
Mr. Chair. Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Director Kompansky, you and I just talked about this briefly a few minutes ago. I just wanted the listening public to know the reason this building is so large is this is where the offices will be located as well.
Well, this will be where the water operators will be working out of.
Yes.
It actually needs to be, because of the way that the system is set up, and we'll also need a vertical lift capability in the overhead to be able to move around some pumps. So that some of this is go back, and Adam, you and Scott can get into this a little bit. So we're actually going to have a ability to lift and move pumps around within it, so that there has to be an ability to keep it higher so we can lift the pumps out and move it around. And additionally, we have the tanks in there, right?
Right, that's correct. Every 5 to 7 years, it's just general practice to remove the motors, remove the pumps, do some maintenance. And rather than bringing a large crane on in, over the long term, it'll be more economically or fiscally efficient to go and put an overhead crane inside the building to then be able to remove the motors, remove the pumps, and other, the tanks as well, for when they need to be serviced.
And the other plant at Willow will probably be very similar in size.
Correct, but it won't have as much as this is, because it will have the brain of the SCADA system and other stuff.
Follow-up? Thank you. Because of the size of these two water treatment facilities, it'll probably be able to take on more than what we've been dealing with when we have the flooding issues, when our water treatment plant can't keep up. Is that correct?
Well, one thing with it is that the flooding issue, we normally have issues at the wastewater plant. And with this being the water plant, we just pull the water that we need to out of the ground to go and meet the demand. So those are really two mutually exclusive scenarios.
This is just treating the water then?
Correct.
Okay. I misunderstood.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Keister.
and maybe this is something will be answered earlier, but it just popped in my head. The capacity of these two stations, are they projected to be able to exceed what we currently need in case there's an increase in flow, or increase in demand, I should say?
Well, it will meet our demand, and it will also be available for future growth. Plus, then one way, or the reason why it's also designed is that if one of our other facilities is down, we have to then have the other facility that is in service sized at a portion to handle the needs of the city, with that one being out of service. Currently, we have the facility at Brick Street, the facility at Carroll Avenue, and then the one over at Willow. So if any one of those three are down, the other two can take and meet the demand of the needs of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see, the next slide is basically that was the parcel of land that the city acquired, and that's basically a drawing of where it sits on that 0.84 acres. Let's see, we also have Adam Holder and Scott Winter. Adam Holder from Fairgram, Scott Winter from Winter and Associates. That can go further on into details as to the treatment plant itself as well as the building.
Thanks for the intro, Tom. Basically, I'll give you let's back up a little bit on where we've been, because this project has been going on basically for over a year. So go back to the aerial, just so everybody can kind of get your basis. It shows the existing aerial photo of the fields of Freeport, partially developed here with a couple of multi-family units. You got, just for reference, the Burchard Hills Clinic, and then Culver's. So if you go up Culver's all the way to the end, there's a dead end, and this is the parcel right here in the southwest corner of that, and there's your Burchard elevated tank that you can see from Burchard Avenue as you drive by. Okay. So when we started this, we were having problems with our water treatment plant and two of the wells out there, which have now been abandoned, and that kind of set the stage for looking at alternative water supply sources within the city and starting our abandonment of the old water treatment plant, which Tom said was built in the 1880s. So it's time that we address this and get the water supply to where it needs to be to provide the reliable and safe service that you've been accustomed to. Again, this is just the footprint of the site plan with the building. Layout is in a 2D format, showing we're going to actually, as part of our agreement, finish the Field Circle Drive, so we'll have access through there, parking for staff, and the well will be down here at the south part. This will be well number 11. We drilled a test well that's come through this council. We do a test well to check the water quality before we invest millions of dollars here on this site. Before we even purchased the land, we went through that exercise to test the water, see what kind of parameters, and make sure there weren't any unknowns. Freeport, basically we have high iron concentrations in our water, natural, and then radium has always been on the cusp. We've never had any violations, but we've seen it kind of spike in and out of what the recommended standards are. So those two things, you're treating at the water treatment plant with your well supply almost to no iron at all. So our consumer base, the businesses, the residents are used to low iron in their water. So if we're going to get rid of the water treatment plant, we need to make provisions to treat it so that they don't have a taste difference or a coloration difference in the well water. So that's the primary reason for the treatment. And let me pull up just the next one here. We showed. So the large tall part of the building is where the two treatment units are going to be. It removes iron, but it also, as a residual of the process, removes radium as well. So we've picked a unit that will treat both. So for efficiencies, we don't have two pieces of equipment, don't have to run through two different processes. The water will go through the filters, it'll remove the iron, and also knock down the radium at the same time before we can distribute into the system. It's been spoken at many council meetings, and recently, primary reason this is our #1 site is because when we went to two pressure systems, a high and a low pressure system, this is uniquely situated where we can pump to both, and it will. It's going to be designed to pump 1,000 gallons per minute into the high zone, 1,000 gallons into the low zone. So that's one of the ultimate advantages that we have with this particular site. Tonight we're just here, we're in concept planning for the building, so we've not started official design on this. It's just more of an informal discussion, updates of where we're at. So we've done our test well, we've purchased the land, we've worked on some concept plans, and then here in a little bit I'll turn it over to Scott with Winter Design Group so he can talk a little bit about how we derived on the particular building style and some of the materials that we're looking more from the architectural and trying to be sensitive to the residential neighborhood that we're trying to fit this into, and making sure we try to make it as accommodating and unobtrusive as possible. Can tell you, and you probably heard in reports, we've gone to, I know Tom has gone, Dennis went along last fall, we went up to Minnesota, so we've actually visited a similar plant size, saw the equipment in operation, talked to their operators. Tom went down a full rundown of how they're operating the system, before we selected what type of equipment. And part of that went into some of the design concepts that we brought back, some of the things we liked about that facility, things from an operation standpoint, and then shared that with Scott so he could create the renderings that he's got in front today. Last thing I'll speak on, we talked about it a little bit. So the north part of this building, this will be to the north, that'll be where our laboratory, the operator's office, equipment rooms, things like that will be in the north part. The tallest part of the building will be in the middle. Those where the treatment units will be located there. And then on the south part of the building, we do have a maintenance a garage for 2 stalls, but then on the back side of this in the south will be where we've got chemical delivery for like your chlorine, fluoride, just your basic chemicals that go into the water before they go into the distribution system. So bulk storage tanks. The pumps that we talked about will be located in the south part. And then lastly, we have a backup generator. So if we have a power outage, this facility will still be able to produce and supply the city with water during those times. So there's a dedicated generator that's built into this as well. I'll be back to answer questions, but I'd like to get Scott brought up here so that he can give his part on the building itself.
Full screen. Good evening, and thank you for having us. So when we first started working with the team, they outlined their goals for the facility to us, and we're working with 3 primary goals. So the first is durability. So that's interior and outside of the building in terms of materiality. The second goal was economy, which durability is related to, right? Long-term durability creates long-term economy for the structure. And the third was contextuality, which Adam spoke to. This is in a residential neighborhood, but it's still an industrial building, so how do we sort of walk the line between those different goals. So to start with the durability, because exterior durability is important, but interior durability of the wall system, the exterior wall system is important. We're recommending a precast concrete structure. So for those of you that aren't familiar, that's a 10 or a 12-inch thick wall that's concrete on the interior and exterior, but it has an insulated core, right? So it's a strong structure. It can support the roof structure itself, so it has economy in that way, right? You're not building an interior structure and then cladding it with something else. This will be self-supporting. You can also paint it on the inside, which creates good durability for the water system. And on the outside, it can also be painted. We're showing basically, yeah, you're right, that doesn't work. Accenting the building with horizontal reveals and painting it in different ways to give it a little bit more of a residential feel and break it down in scale. So durability, precast concrete. For the roof system, we're looking at trusses with a metal standing seam roof, which will give you the best long-term durability for the roof. In terms of economy, primarily working with the precast system, like I said, you're getting a dual function out of that wall. Also in terms of economy, what we've done is tried to break the scale of the building down. As Adam mentioned, in the center of the building, you have the large tanks and the pumps, and you have the overhead clearances. So we obviously need the roof height there, but what we're doing on either side is dropping that roof height down to create less exterior wall, which creates savings. Along with the precast, we're recommending creating a painted. So as you see, there's sort of different colors shown on the concept. Banding, all of that is just done with paint. We're not adding extra ornament to the building. It's a very utilitarian, but using simple materials and simple structural elements to create some interest in the facade. And then lastly, as Adam mentioned, contextuality. Being right next to residential units, duplexes, we don't want this thing to look like a massive industrial facility. So what we did is played around with the massing for economy. As I mentioned, we dropped the different heights, which gives it more of a residential feel. Going to the hip roof structure also gives it sort of that character. So we feel this is sort of a blend between the industrial character with the overhead doors and it's sort of a residential massing. Also to give it a little bit more of a pedestrian scale feel, we added in the windows in the middle of the building, which that's actually a 2-story space, but we'll have some punched openings on the lower level and then sort of at the upper level just to, again, give it a little bit more of that residential character. But overall, we still feel like it has sort of a blend of the industrial character and the residential. These are some other views as we've already seen. Again, breaking down that massing. Here's just a 3D. We'll give you a better feel for the sides. Again, you've got the offices on the right, treatment facility in the center. You've got the maintenance bays on the left, the 2 garage doors you see there, and then the roll-up door on the far left is chemical delivery. And from I'll close just with the first drawings. You saw that was concept D. So we did start with sort of a solidly industrial building and created a series of concepts that were more residential to the spectrum and more to the industrial spectrum, just to sort of prove the thesis and see how all those different concepts looks, and this is the end result of where the team landed. So, thank you.
So just to kind of close, so this is our concept. We'll have discussion, questions tonight on this. We've been working on the EPA loan, as you've seen documents start to come forward before council, and there's going to be some more documents coming your way here shortly. But our intent here is on the EPA loan. We have a permit to drill well 11. So as soon as the EPA gives us green light to go out for bids for that, we will be going out for bids for that. We currently have the water main connections for the high and low systems, plus some looping that was identified in our project plan with the EPA that's in for permit review right now. So those will be the first 2 projects. As soon as the EPA gives us green light, they have our funding in place, ready to issue a loan. Those will be going out for bid simultaneously. And then this will kind of be the second part Right now, we're just in concept phase, so if we get blessing from council and from everything, then we'll be moving forward with a design contract to do full design, get the permits, and then we'll be going for bidding this project this will be kind of the second loan project that we've got. And then the third one, not to confuse the issue, will be a lead service replacement one. So those are the first 3 out of the 5 loans that you saw in your authorizing ordinance here last week at council on first reading, which is again on for approval next Monday. So,
And we'll have it at 5 o'clock. We'll have a public hearing as required by this loan. So that'll be at 5 o'clock next Monday for the 5 loans.
They should have started, I've got 11 by 17s back here. We'll bring more on council on the 15th because we'll do another brief presentation like tonight in front of full council for presentations so that people can have them if they want to get visuals. I know it's been to a few council meetings lately and they asked if we could at least have printouts of some of the slides and things that we're putting up here. So fire away.
At this time, anyone has any question for either one of these gentlemen?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Alderman Keister.
I realize we haven't gotten into the interior design yet, but you had stated that with the pump building, there's going to be an interior crane put in there to be able to move the pumps and the motors, is that correct? Is that going to be able to be used to take the motors and pumps if they need to be replaced over to the stalls to be able to be loaded and get out? Or has thought been given to that to be able to use that so you don't have to get something extra at that time?
Yeah, basically, you're correct. We'll have access in there for if we've got to send that pump out for maintenance. Basically, we decided to do that interior versus putting a hatch in the roof and bringing in a big crane to lift it out and then onto a truck. But yeah, we will have made provisions for that in initial sizing of the rooms, and we'll get into that in final design.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I realize I'm getting a little ahead of the game, but it's just, now's the time to think about that because I think it'll save a lot of hassles and a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Oh,
That's okay, go ahead.
okay. Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. I'm glad that this is such a classy design to fit in a residential neighborhood, and this is in my ward. And a few of the questions that were posed to me were, is it going to be noisy? Will there be much noise pollution? How much traffic will this bring through that area past Culver's? Because Culver's is kind of a traffic jam, sometimes trying to get in and out of there on a busy lunch day. So do you think you could address that?
As far as traffic circulation, I don't see this making it any harder or difficult congestion-wise.
Okay.
If you want to take the first
Noise?
one, or-
Yeah, I mean, in terms of noise, a precast concrete exterior will actually be the best possible solution. You have the density of the concrete, and you also have the insulation, which each block their own sound wavelength, so that's the best solution. The windows, we just need to make sure they're well insulated, and I think it's set up well to
Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, the filter system is also a very, it doesn't have the noise that you would normally associate because of the way it's set up.
Yeah, actually, we talked about, to address those concerns, the generator would actually be the loudest.
If it came on
Which
generator.
typically would be outside, but we decided with the scale and the proximity to residents to put that interior instead of having the generator sit outside without, so that'll help muffle that sound.
Okay. And may I have one more question?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Alderperson.
Can you explain to me the lift station? Because I misunderstood. I thought the lift station was for the sanitary, not sanitary, but the regular sewer, you know, the regular runoff water, that there was a lift station for that there. That's why I was kind of confused there at the
I think
beginning.
he was referring to lifting the pumps out, they're well
Yeah.
pumps, you're correct, the lift stations are to pump the sewage, yep, so that would not be part of this.
So I do apologize. I was a little confused there.
You got it.
Thank you.
Alderman Clem.
Just a quick one. It looks like, is it about 11,000 feet, 10.8 or so in that neighborhood? At least the basement area of it, square footage, 155 by whatever here. But it looks like, is there a basement under like 2/3 of it? Or is that just foundation I'm looking at?
Just
here?
foundation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's roughly 155 by 70. So I can punch that for you real quick.
10,850.
You got it. Just like the estimator, right?
Yeah, no problem. And then then the other section from that, I also had the same question you did on noise too, so thank you for asking that. Then, basically, as we look at this, where we're showing the foundation there, then the other end will be the garages and that kind of stuff over from it. Okay. Correct. Thank you.
Okay, Alderman, Beverly.
Thank you. The precast concrete walls, inside and outside, is that going to present, when it's painted, a future maintenance issue? Has to be painted so many years, or based on weather, especially outside?
Yes, you will have to repaint the structure approximately every 10 to 15 years.
Oh, 10 to 15, okay, that's, okay.
We had
That's-
that discussion when we were going through designs with
Okay.
staining the concrete, painting.
Another, thank you. And is any consideration being given to any type of solar energy, solar panels?
We have talked about it, I guess that would be kind of out of the design, if we can see some feasibility, and maybe putting roof mounts would probably be the only, we don't really have to put it on the ground to do any ground mounts.
Okay.
We have been in discussion with similar to what we're doing with the wastewater treatment facility. And we actually had tried to get them to come up into the area of Burchard, but the owner of the property didn't want to sell that to us.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Chair?
Yes, Alderman Clapton.
With 155 by 70 approximate dimensions on that, how does that compare to our current plant and the dimensions? Is it a smaller footprint, significantly smaller footprint?
It probably would be the same size footprint, and probably our Brick Street would be a little bit bigger right now of the process that's on the outside as well as the area on the inside.
Okay.
I think the only difference is the height of these particular filters, so you got that second story in the middle. But I think, Tom's right, if I had to guess, I would say that footprint, as far as the ground space, is bigger. This is more efficient with the technologies and filtration we have to do than what we had back 100+ years ago.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, my question, my own self, what would happen with the former Brick Street facility?
Once we get posted.
Well, let's see, basically, when we have the new facilities up and running, we would look to go, the two wells, number 5, number 7 would be capped and abandoned, and then the treatment plant would be isolated from the rest of the system. And then we would look to discuss as to, do we raise it? Do we repurpose it? I mean, that would be for discussion, 4 years from now or so.
So the big concern we have with it is it's right next to the rail line, and we want to take out the, currently, as you know, the piping goes underneath the rail line. We're going to have to eventually shut all that down, so.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Keesler.
Yeah, on the lines with noise and stuff too, I was just curious. I know that at the current facilities, there's some pipes and stuff stored and some some work done there before it goes out to the site. Is that going to be the same here, or is that going to be stored at a different site and it won't be in this area?
Let's see, correct. The way things look is the way they're going to be. We're not going to go and have any of the construction crews work out of there, and there's not going to be pipe materials laying out on the property. We have our other facilities.
In
right
fact,
now.
as of, correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis, they've all moved down to Island as of
Wednesday.
as of Wednesday. So that was one of the goals when we moved to Island, was we knew that this facilities wouldn't be able to have the construction crews up here. So that was, so that's why one of the reasons we moved them down, one of many reasons we moved them to Island.
And I appreciate that, because I know we're making great efforts to make it blend in, but if we start storing pipes and everything else there, that's going to kind of ruin all this extra effort and make it unpalatable for the neighbors, I guess I would say.
Correct, and there's plenty of space over at Hancock and over at Brick Street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, does anyone else have any other question for the gentleman? Is there anything you'd like to see done as for tonight, moved on, or anything like that?
This was just a presentation.
Okay. If,
Can I one more?
You will get, so the council, as we move forward with this, will we'll be coming in every so often to give presentations to the council about our progress as we go forward with this one. Since this and the Willow account for the majority of those loans as we go forward.
Okay, Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. Thank you, Manager Crowe, about if we will have future presentations as you go along. And also, I understand that if everything is approved and you go out for the bidding, when do you anticipate you would break ground for this building if everything goes through as anticipated?
Most likely next spring,
Next spring, like April?
because we're gonna drill the well first, and make sure that the well is good, because just because we did a test well, we talked about it, it's an insurance policy, but it's not a 100% guarantee. So we're gonna drill the well, make sure that that's got good quality water like we anticipated. This will be going through the process of getting it designed, permitted, and bid, but then we'll start the construction probably most likely next spring. That's, we'll probably be bidding it hopefully by the fall, so we'll have numbers and things to be ready for this. But that's where we're at.
I had a few constituents near Culvers that had requested that information, so I'm just answering their question. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any thing for the gentleman?
It's not a really nice picture, but I'll just throw it up there. That is you can see the two units side by side, so that just gives you a perspective of the two units. That's from the facility we visited in Minnesota. So these are the units here, and then there's some inner piping between the two. Just thought I'd show that so you can see that what the big pump room or the treatment room will look like.
It's real exciting.
Yeah, really exciting, I know.
Maybe we could have some prettier colors or something.
I know,
Yeah, right.
yeah, it's cool stuff, yeah. It's clean.
Okay then, well, I'll tell you what, I want to thank you gentlemen for coming tonight and one of the great presentations you already done and many more to come, so thank you again.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Moving on to number 8. A discussion of ordinances assessing electric and natural gas tax. View 40% electric tax, 50% electric tax, view the 4-cent gas tax, and a 5-cent gas tax presented by Manager Grove, City Manager Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this has been a labor of love by myself, Director Bucus, and Attorney Zito. We've been looking at this probably now since we initially talked about this at the budget presentations. What we have given you are a couple different options here. The idea is that this will fund our pensions. We initially had talked about a way to fund our pensions. Some of the communities in Illinois are they're funding their pensions through the electric and gas tax. We currently sit at the bottom 10% in the state in both electric and gas tax from our review on it. In fact, I believe that we are the lowest gas tax in the state. We are currently the way these ordinances are set up is the 4-cent gas tax and the 4-cent electric per kilowatt, it's 2,000 kilowatt tax is set up so that half goes to the general fund, which it already is. We are already receiving that amount into the general fund. The other half will be into the pensions for the 0.5 per 2,000 kilowatts and the 5-cent per therm. We also set aside 20% additional for road tax, which will give us about, for road in the ordinance, which will give us about $580,000 towards roads, which almost double what our current budget is. And what's nice about this is this money is not like MFT where we have to make sure curbs and gutters, drainage is put in as we're doing with MFT. This allows us to fix roads as we see necessary going forward. We don't have to replace everything. We can do what's required. This will actually start making a large dent in that $63 million road repair budget. What this will do, we do have an, to look at the funding, this will bring our pensions up to the 90% funded level. And I'm pulling my sheets out here so I have it. So the actuary minimum contribution, this will bring both these pensions. We're actually going to make a recommendation if you go to the to flip-flop police and fire, because both will be then at minimum, almost to the minimum contribution. Fire will be a little bit below, but police will be actually above the minimum contribution because we are we are underfunded at 48%, and that'll continue to raise that up. So the electric will go towards police, fire will go towards, gas will go towards fire, other than what we had originally written. After we started looking at the numbers, ComEd was, NICOR, because they had done this, had given us the figures right up front. We're still working with ComEd. They had given us initial figures on it, but that's our recommendation. This will bring our police and fire pensions up to a point where we're meeting the minimum recommended actuarial contribution going forward. If we go to the full 5 cents, that will give us, as I said, the ability to do additional road work. Randy handed out our Plan A's and Plan B's to everybody. Plan A is what you have with the ordinances. Plan B is the switching them, as I just discussed. And so the three of us are standing by for any questions. You'll notice in the electric ordinance, it's not completely filled out, and that's because ComEd has yet to give us the final figures.
Manager Crowe, are you recommending B then?
We are recommending B, but I'm also making the recommendation with B plus the additional tax for roads. So it's the 5B for the contributions plus the additional 20% for.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Alderman Clem.
Peter, tell me if I'm wrong here, but basically where this comes from is last year as we were working on budget, we were working on the levy and everything else, we basically took the stance that we were not going to raise taxes, but we were going to take a look at adding electrical and natural gas taxes and that kind of stuff and putting it straight onto the pension funds. And that's really what you're seeing here today. So this is not the first time we're looking at or talking about doing this. It's been talked about 6 months ago at least to start with. So I just wanted to put that in perspective.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
Just out of curiosity, if we went with Plan A instead of Plan B, there's not a significant increase in the amount, but would we be able to, if we did that increase, put more towards the pensions and bring them back up more solvent and get paid off faster? It wouldn't be a significant amount, but would that be able to help a little bit?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question. So Plan B sets up, we're still over contributing to the police pension, which is our underfunded pension, but it brings up our fire pension to our minimum, closer to our minimum contribution required to maintain get to that 90% funded that the actuarial, that the recommendation is to meet the minimum contribution. So the 199.6 is still over the minimum, and it's over the IDOI, which is the Illinois Department of Insurance recommendation. So we're actually going to start catching up on police with that contribution. And police currently is funded at 48%, and fire is at 65%. We are over what the average is in the state for fire and under the average for police. And to remind everybody, the reason we got a single A rating they actually came out was because we did not have a clear-cut plan to lower our liability going forward for fire and police pensions. And this would give us a clear, in fact, when they had asked us that we had talked to them about this in our bond call, rating call. They had asked for this ordinance. We were not ready, because we hadn't presented it to you, to give it to them. They said that would have affected us, and we could have gone to an A+ or a AA rating.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is if we went to Plan A, which, I don't know, my math is not real good today, but we're looking at, what, about 90,000 that we could put annually towards the police and bring that up to a better funding rate, percentage rate, would that help us?
It would, but we would be under the minimum recommended contribution by almost 150,000 for fire, so we would start losing fire.
Okay, so if we went with Plan A and took that extra and put it towards the fire and kept up with that,
Well, that's Plan B.
Plan B.
Chair?
All right,
Alderman
confused here
McLeod.
Thank you. I'd like to step back a little bit
Sure.
and kind of address kind of the why are we talking about this at this time, and how did we get here? Why are we talking about this, and why do we believe that this will address what we're looking at? So, first, a couple clarification on a couple terms. Historically, until last year, the state of Illinois, we were required to have a 90% funded ratio with a target date of about a little more than 20 years from now, correct?
2040 was the target date.
So we'll just say 20 years just for simplicity's sake here. That has been, now while that's still the state recommendation, the General Accounting Standards Board has changed it to 100% target funding rating, and that is what our actuaries look at when they're looking at our books, correct?
That's correct.
Now, when you said when you were talking just a moment ago, you said that this proposal would get us to the 90% threshold.
That's the actuary minimum contribution recommended. So they're using the state standard. Their actual recommended is much higher than that.
So when we look at the sheets here on that, the 2019 actuary recommendation is what they're saying we would need to hit for the 100% funded in about 20 years from now, correct?
That's correct.
But the 2019 actuary minimum contribution will get us at that, is supposed to shoot us for that 90% funded threshold, which is the current state requirement.
That's correct.
Okay. To go back a little further then, right now, when you say we're 65% funded with fire and 48% funded with police, that leaves us a combined shortfall of real dollar, or in the actuary real dollars, of $44 million if combined, correct?
I think it's actually more closer to 48.
48 or 54,000.
Yeah. It's much larger than that. And one of the concerns why this is now becoming, not only is it affecting our bond rating, but it's a big concern, and if you, is that more and more of the pension, the fire and police unions are suing the cities to hold back the taxes because the funds are not fully funded. Harvey's already lost, so is East Chicago has lost, and that currently the International Association of Firefighters is currently in court with the city of Chicago.
Follow-up, Chair.
Yes, go
All
ahead.
right. So going back to the combined shortfall, and historically, people, because I'm sure one of the questions constituents are going to ask is, well, how did we get in this situation? Would it be an accurate statement that in the past, the states, up until the last year or so, gave what we had certain assumptions. For instance, like 8% returns, a certain life expectancy. And then there was the state actually told municipalities, here's the minimum required contribution. So municipalities that were meeting that minimum required contribution weren't actually practically keeping up with the real obligations, but the local councils wouldn't really know that. Is that an accurate summary?
That is
okay.
Accurate. And it's the IDOI, and I'll go into a little bit more details. So the Illinois Department of Insurance gave their recommended, and it was based upon an 8% return from the market, which was not getting the return. In 2015, Gadsby adopted, it actually was adopted in 14, went into effect 15 to 16, the Gadsby 6768 that says we are going to really lay out, and an actuary, your fundings are now going to have to be figured out by an actuary for municipal pensions. The actuaries came in and they said this 8% return is an unrealistic return because of the state requirements for how you have to divide the pensions between both bonds as well as stock market, and that the I think they said 6.75 is what the recommended return are. So it automatically put us in the hole.
So can I continue to follow up, Chair?
Yes, you can.
All right, so it puts us in a significant hole. We're not unique. There are many other communities like that, but the fact remains we're in a significant hole. And another portion of this is the city of Freeport can't tomorrow go in and say, we're going to change our pension plans. It is mandated by state statute. The Illinois Supreme Court has indicated for individuals that are currently in a plan on it, their benefits can't be changed. So when we say we've got, whether it's 44, 48, 54, whatever we're at for the unfunded liability, from our city's standpoint, that's an obligation we are, whether by state statute or by Illinois Constitution, going to have to find a way to address one way or the other, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
then,
I mean, even gets more. The state dictates at what rate we have to increase the pensions, so we get an automatic 3%. It's 3% or cost of living increase, whichever is higher for both fire and police as we go forward. And they also dictate how we have to invest the fire and police pensions based upon the amount that's in the fund and what the return has to be.
can I continue, Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Alderman McClanahan.
And so shifting over to our roads too. So well, I guess to end, and we'll come back, but to end for this part of the pension formula, it's an obligation that it's our basic duty is how are we going to fund it. The shortfall's there. Our only real question is how are we going to address it and not get to the point of no return like Harvey and some of those other municipalities you mentioned. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Turning over to the road side, engineer, our city engineer, as well as you have mentioned, we've got about $63 million worth of work on it. And before we buy, and we just recently, last week, bonded about $2.7 million worth of work.
That's
so
correct.
less than 5% of that outstanding work, correct?
That's correct.
And given the current motor fuel tax reimbursements of about $650,000 a year, with your current revenue streams, are there any other additional ways that we can fund additional roads as we currently have it, or is our motor fuel tapped? And then this 2.7, nice start, but it's less than 5% of our work.
So motor fuel tax, actually, what a portion of that is, so our portion of motor fuel tax is actually, that we can use towards our roads, it's about, what, 400,000?
That is because we currently use some of our MFT money for our in-house asphalt work, and that kind of, and our patch. We use a lot of patch right now.
So it gives us about 400,000. We do not see that increasing. In fact, the briefings that they're giving all the county and municipality engineers, as well as the city managers, I went to one over in Rockford, is they expect motor fuel tax to continue to decrease because fuel efficiencies on vehicles are getting better. They're seeing that the state, it's been over since 2002, the amount that your buying dollar buys has been reduced by almost 140%, while the cost of materials has quadrupled.
Chair?
Yes, Alderman McClanahan.
Okay, so we have three significantly outstanding financial obligations. One, the $200+ million worth of work with water and sewer, which
That's
we've
correct.
addressed financing for that. Two, about $63 million worth of work on roads, which we don't currently have a financing source for. And three, this $44 to $54 million worth of unfunded pension liability, of which we have no additional funding source for.
correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are those the three largest outstanding obligations of the city at this time?
Yes.
So, yeah, no,
I'm
it's,
aware about that.
it
Both
is.
of us, yes.
It is.
Okay.
Sorry for the humor.
And going back to since you've been here, with the exception of the police department, have you made structural changes to every other departments in this city to increase efficiencies and reduce expenses?
Yes, in fact, we've reduced the size of every department by at least one person.
Do you believe, in your opinion, after having done all those restructurings and reductions of size, that you have any additional leeway in regards to staff size?
No, not at this time.
Okay. May I continue?
Yes.
You want to, or you just want to jump in here, Tom? But
No, you're doing
okay.
fine.
So looking at how do we, and I mean, I think if you ask the public, they'd probably say roads are their top priority on this time on it. And don't forget, 100% of our property taxes are already your city portion. If you look at your property tax bill, 100% of that is
Goes
going
pensions.
towards pensions already.
As well as the personal property replacement tax.
I see in your proposal here, if we do the 5-cent proposal there on that, I see if we do that proposal, it does not add an additional dime at this time to general funds. It would only go entirely towards police and fire pensions and then also road work.
That's correct.
So if we were to implement this, can we guarantee our constituents that every dime of it would be going towards, additional dime of it would be going towards reducing our pension, meeting our pension obligations, reducing that unfunded liability, and improving our roads?
That's why we have it set up in ordinance to do that. I would have to come back to, or myself or whoever's the city manager at that many years now would have to come back to city council and ask for that division to be changed.
I have a question for Director Bucas. Looking at this Plan A and Plan B, I realize under Plan A, we exceed that 90% minimum actuary contribution for the police and are slightly under it for fire. However, currently fire is in a much more stable position than the police pension. Is there an is there an argument to be made that we should do what we can to shore up the police more rapidly while maintaining and increasing our funding for the fire as opposed to the Plan B, or what's your thought process on that?
Well, originally we were talking about Plan A before we really knew what some of the numbers were, and as we started getting numbers in from both NICOR and ComEd, we were looking at Plan A. And as you stated, Plan A, we're still going to be short by roughly $90,000 to meet this year's minimum. That's not to say next year that minimum is going to be even higher because we didn't meet the recommended this time. And as depending on how the market does, we could fall behind even further. And then on the same token, we're somewhere between 90 and 100%. I think it's closer to like 93% with the proposed A for the police pension fund. So we are gaining a little bit there, and I think that's important that we at least get up to at least 50% with the police pension fund. There's been talk in Springfield in the past, and haven't heard anything this year yet, about the state coming in and mandating how we're going to fund some of these pensions, that they may take our income tax money and start applying it towards pensions because the pensions are so far behind in a lot of places. The Illinois Municipal League has come out with 5 different proposals that the state legislature is now looking at as to how they might combine some of the downstate police and fire pensions to try and make them more efficient and that. So right now I would like to go with Plan B just because I don't want the fire pension fund to fall any further behind, but kind of maintain where they are, and we're still giving more than the 90% to the police pension fund.
Chair,
Alderman McClellan.
in your professional opinion, if we were to say thank you for the information regarding the taxes on this and our pension level, and we're just to maintain what we're currently giving by 100% of the city's property tax plus the personal property replacement tax, even assuming good market years for the next 5 years, would you anticipate that we would make what would your opinion be in regards to the state of our plans if we continue funding just at the level we're currently funding it?
We're going to continue to fall behind. We fell behind this past year, and we'll continue to fall behind. Our 2 pension funds are earning roughly about 6.7% over the last 10 years. And as the Manager Crow pointed out, we're restricted in how we can invest our money. We can't put it all in the stock market and take a gamble and get some good returns. We're restricted by the amount of assets that we have and how we can allocate those assets for investment.
Alderman Beverly.
Thank you. Manager Crowe, the 5 cents is based on therms and kilowatt hours. What does ComEd and iGas project for future years? Because if we don't generate additional funds, that's going to affect what we are able to pay to the continued growth in the pensions. So is that offset in any way? Do they see growth? People are trying to be more efficient these days.
They've seen a regular growth. A lot of it depends on what the growth in the city is as we go forward. But they've seen, we're beginning to see industrial growth within the city, which drives electric and gas up. And we're seeing over the historical years, it's been pretty consistent to growing.
Okay. All right. Just to follow up.
Yes, Alderman Beverly.
Would these increases be applied to the new budget coming up or the following year?
So this, if we pass this, this would go, we would pass this would be applied the 1st of June. If we went, the proposed schedule is to bring it for first reading next Monday, second reading the first week in May. We also have to pass a resolution, if I'm right, for NICOR as well on that. So that will be at the second, after we do the second reading.
Okay.
And then it'll be going into effect the 1st of June.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Keister.
Yeah, first of all, I want to apologize for my earlier question. I had some confusion on this, but I understand now why Plan B, and I agree with that. And I just want to say I'm glad to see that we are looking at alternative funding. I must say back latter part of last year when we said we were going to do this, I was skeptical because I was told before we were going to do this to try and short us up. I'm glad to see that we are at least looking at it, and I hope we move forward with it in a manner, because I think this is about as fair as we're going to get to spread it out as many people as possible to get an additional revenue source. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions or make any motions?
Yeah, actually, City Manager, would you mind addressing two thoughts? You had made a comment that we were the lowest in the state or among the lowest. And if we go with Plan B, where will that put us as far as the rest of municipalities in the state? And then also, what does it mean to the average homeowner?
So I'm going to ask, Randy may have the average homeowners. About 60% of the municipalities have the full 5% across the state. So it would put us back up relatively in that where we would be, where 60% of the municipalities are. And what we looked at is every municipality, as we talked about, we are the 94th largest municipality in the state of Illinois, and actually the 23rd largest outside of the collar counties in Chicago. And what you find is the municipalities that are in that area are the larger municipalities. Those that are over the 10,000 are in that 5%. There are 1,223 villages, towns, and cities in the state of Illinois, and we're the 94th largest. The impact.
The impact as far as electric goes, currently the average homeowner resident in Freeport is paying approximately $1.50 per month, $1.51 per month in our municipal electric tax. If we could increase it to the maximum rate, that amount would go to about $4.10. On the gas, I'm still looking for the gas. I don't think I have anything on the gas, but give me another minute, maybe I could. Oh, here it is. The average homeowner for gas right now is about $1.77 they're paying in municipal tax, and that would go to $4.43 per month.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Alderman Keister.
One final question, Manager Crowe. Do you have any idea when we might get final figures from ComEd, or we have no idea of that yet? And if we do, the ordinance will be adjusted accordingly?
We've been working very closely with Tom from ComEd as we go forward. He's been our rep. The issue is he's got to go down into the ComEd, basically, and get the people to calculate it and then bring it back to us. So that's been an interesting, I know he had promised us to have it by this meeting, and so.
That was his hope by today.
Chair.
Alderman McClanahan.
Going back to the roads, and I know we've got the multi-year plans, what would you anticipate we could see in regards to additional work, or is it just gonna have to be fleshed out in regards to? I'm not asking for commitment to certain streets and things of that nature, but
What I can see is the streets, and I'll ask Director Carr to comment on this too. As much as the projects we're using for the bonding, where we're doing concrete stabilization, we're doing other asphalt work where we're doing cold and replace, those type of things. And I can see right now in our long-range budget, out when you're talking year 3, 4, and 5, we're talking about federal dollars, and Adams is the big concentration. So this would give us ability to do some other roads that, as we go further out. Dennis, you want to add to that?
I mean, we really haven't looked at kind of planning any kind of roads out for this. I mean, without the funding in hand, we weren't sure what kind of time we wanted to spend on trying to project out something that may or may not exist. So,
sure.
Yes, Alderman McClanahan.
Well, to follow up on that then, would the plan continue to be that you're going to marry some of the water and sewer projects then with roads on that, as opposed to, hodgepodge, like a road here, road there, and then a couple of years we dig it up for the pipes?
yes, we would be making sure we go with both water main and roadway, and kind of programming them out together, knowing how much funding we have coming for water. We will start to really fall behind on some of the roads that have bad water main, with the condition of the road if we can't do anything to maintain them. So at some point in time, we're going to have to take a look at some of those that do have the poor water main to make sure we can at least get them to the point of fixing the water main as well.
So what we've done is, you'll remember from the 5-year capital plan, we actually, this bond that we just approved will get us through year 3 of that capital plan. And so that will allow us, we pass this, we can start working towards saving that money so we can do that same type of projects in the out years, and start building a good $1 million per year work as we go forward, which can get us $1 million, can get us a full 2 miles, 1.5 miles to 2 miles worth of road. It really gets us down to where we can really make a dent in in our road conditions.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Alderman McClanahan.
I would assume then, Manager Crowe and Dennis, that you guys are going to come up with if this goes through, if we vote this through, that you're going to come up with a list and keep it all above board so everybody knows
Yes.
what's going to be done and there's no issues?
Yeah, just like we did with the capital plan when we showed you where the bond money was going to go.
Thank you. I would make a motion to move it to the council floor with Plan B.
Second. Well, there's a motion been made by Alderman Clint, seconded by Alderman Keister. All in favor? Ayes have it. Any opposed? Well, let's move on to number 9. Discussion regarding an ordinance modified a development agreement with Sega Manufacturing. View amended to a RDA. View assessors memo. View original RDA at the March 11th, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting. Alderperson McClanahan made the motion to move this to April 8th Committee of the Whole meeting, and it was seconded by Alderman Busker, and was automatically laid over to tonight's meeting, presented by City Manager Crowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. that to you earlier. That was, I didn't want to, I discovered this on Thursday, looking through it, and I had everybody check my math, so moving forward. So this is what this does is, we talked about it, it modifies the RDA uh, to pay out, since they were paid for the creation of the TIF, as we went through, and the creation of the TIF was in the RDA, and I'd sent that out, and the original RDA was about, hold on, figures here real quick. Sheet of paper. Creation of the TIF cost Sega $16,868.59. Plus, that was their legal work and the consultants to create that. So they created the TIF, and one of the things, and this gets into a policy decision from the council as we go forward to modify the RDA, so we get the increment out of the complete TIF, which Lamb Road TIF is our most profitable TIF. We have 600,000 currently in the, is that about right? 600, what's the amount in our account?
I just got a bill in today, so it's going to be about 700,000.
Okay, 700,000.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the land room too. And that was based upon, we discussed the last committee of the whole, the discussion was, is the parcels had been separated to both get Sega both the EAV for the enterprise zone and the TIF dollars. However, the increment was based upon the total value, $613,180. In 2012, taxes were protested and reviewed by the board, and that lowered increment, that value of the property below the $613,180. The properties were brought back together as in 2012, as the enterprise zone were expired in the TIF increment, and we do give them we do give Sega basically it's a letter that says, if we get increment, we will pay you back. But it is related strictly to the increment within the TIF. So if it ever gets increment while the TIF is in existence, we will pay them their amount. So when Mr. Chesney, when he talked to me about this, said that he was not aware that when the TIFs were brought back together, that that he was going to, he thought that was strictly, his property tax strictly went up when the enterprise zone expired, and he didn't realize the protesting the taxes would his income. So at that, I will let this is really where it's legal to change the RDA as we go forward, and then it really becomes a policy decision from the council as we go forward. And we're all standing by for your questions.
Anyone have any questions for anyone?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Alderman Clem.
I have quite a few, but I think this is a very highly political issue. This has been in effect since 2000, when the work was done, and all of a sudden it becomes a big crisis. I spent about an hour with Ron Kane taking a look at all the notes and all the things on how the building was divided. Mr. Chesney was well aware that the building was divided, and Mr. Chesney got 2 tax bills one year, 1 tax bill another year, which would be quite obvious that there is a change in the balance of the 2 parties. The building was split, where he took advantage of the funds that were available from the enterprise zone, used all of them. And I don't know if you guys are aware of it or not, but we also have abated a mere $337,081.18 worth of taxes to Mr. Chesney. So it's not as though I think he's going broke on this. I think that he made a bad decision on protesting his taxes, and now he has nothing to get the money out of. I'm trying to grab a hold of just what the difference is in this new redevelopment RDA, because one of the things that it states in here, states very boldly in Mr. Zito's letter, is the fact that we cannot take any money from any other TIF properties and put it into this project. I believe we've all read that one place or another.
That was what the original RDA said.
And I believe Mr. Zito right here says, increment generated by other properties within the TIF district is not to be used to reimburse SEGA.
Correct. In that memo, that was my summary of what the terms of the existing RDA say.
Says it right there. Okay.
Correct. So the existing RDA says that we are not to take increment from other properties within the TIF.
Then if we're not taking it from other properties and we're putting out a new RDA, tell me what this new RDA is going to do.
And so this isn't a new RDA. What's being proposed is an amendment to the RDA, which is to change that exact provision. The provision that currently reads, we are not to reimburse out of increment generated from other properties in the TIF. And the proposal would be to change that to say we can reimburse using increment generated from other properties in the TIF.
Why would that be an advantage for 25,000 taxpayers in the city of Freeport?
And again, that question I can't answer, Alderman Clem. That's a policy decision as to what the benefits would be to paying back on an RDA that was, negotiated in 2004.
Understand that, but to say that this property was not known that it was split is completely bogus. If you got a property and you know what's happening between the TIF and the enterprise zone, which this man does because he's done enough developments and that kind of stuff, you can't stand back here and tell me that you didn't know it happened. And then when you paid 2 lawyers to fight your taxes, so your taxes would go down, now you're at a reduced level of taxes and you're not getting your increment. So I'd say maybe that wasn't the best move that was performed in the world, but I think we probably got other developments, other RDAs out there that maybe leave a little bit to be desired too. The one thing I did ask for that I didn't see, and I'm not picking by any means, I'm just trying to find it out. What I'm really looking for is, and I looked through the redevelopment agreement, and it basically starts out to talk about the $175,000 and this and go through that. I don't have a problem in that. All I've asked for is somebody tell me, or somebody show me, what we've paid him when, and I haven't seen that.
So if you look at the sheet I gave you for the payment of the RDA, where from Ron Kane, that was the amount that was supposed to be paid as determined by, and that's has been determined by Ron. So that was by the county, and that's the way the RDAs do, is we file it with them. So that's the amount that we paid, was supposed to be paid. We did not pay that amount. Randy has the amount that we did pay, and we can present that to you. And when we calculated out what we were supposed to be paid and what we did pay, we found that we were $16,541.53 short in the payment.
And that was all from monies that were developed by SEGA.
That's correct. In fact, where the RDA says right now is this payment for the RDA is 80% of the increment generated. So there's 20% of the increment that was not paid to him.
Peter and I just briefly talked about this, not beforehand, but we said, if there's something that he's legitimately owed here, then we ought to take a look at paying it. But I'd like to take a look at all that in some nice, simple figures in front of me saying, here's this, and here's this. And as long as it has generated those funds, I don't have a problem with paying it.
Madam Mayor?
Alderperson,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, Alderperson
Forgot we're at
Bradshaw,
a
go right
committee of
ahead.
the whole, please forgive me. When I'm reading through a lot of these notes here that we were given, and it says that the total amount to be reimbursed to Mr. Chesney was memorialized in a TIF note in the amount of $191,869. The notes change different times because of the interest rates and a few different things. Issuance dated back to March 23rd, 2005, with the note bearing an interest rate at 7%. That's pretty common in a business loan. We wouldn't have this TIF district without SAGA. I know that they do generate income with it, and it says under here that there's a balance of approximately $100,000 is still owed by the city to SAGA. And I don't believe that included the $16,541.
That's where we got the 78, as we took off the amount, the 16,541.53 cents, which we calculated based upon what the RDA payment here is and what we've actually paid him to date.
May I continue? I guess I will.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me that is a business person like anybody else that's going to set up a TIF situation, and we signed a legal agreement with him saying that we'd pay him back the money for doing this, and we have not kept our end of the bargain. So to me, it looks like we owe him the amount that they're talking about. The one was approximately $78,000 and some odd amount, and the other was $16,541. I mean, any business person that's owed the money by the city would be ridiculous not to go after it and ask for their reimbursement when they signed a legal agreement. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Alderman Keister.
one of the things I'd be curious about is how many other people in TIF districts do we have in a similar type situation? I.e., we set up a TIF district, the money's going to be paid out of that TIF district, but there's not enough there, and they ask us to go dip into another one. Do we have any others besides them to do it?
So we are not dipping into another TIF district.
Okay.
We're paying out of would be paying out of the same TIF district as the Lamb Road TIF, which is this property sits in, and Walmart sits in, Menards sits in as we go forward. So it wouldn't be transferring money between TIF districts, and each RDA is treated differently and written differently. I will tell you that since Attorney Zito and I have gotten here, with the RDAs we've developed, we do not allow in the RDAs them to protest their taxes, because at that point we write in there that protesting the taxes it's very laid out in the RDA that protesting your taxes will result in loss of your increment going forward. That was not previously written into the RDAs. Additionally, we never write the RDAs like we're in the process of negotiating an RDA right now, where we say we're only going to give you 25% of the increment. We don't. When we have RDAs right now that say we're going to give you 100% of the increment, even though we owe 25% of the increment to the other taxing bodies. So we're having to take out of our own pocket that money.
Follow up?
Alderman Keister.
I guess I'm having trouble understanding where the problem is then, because what I originally thought is he was in a different district, couldn't give him the money because the money wasn't there. Now the money's there. Where's the problem in giving it to him? That's what I don't understand.
So the current RDA says that he will only get increment, and he will only get money from the increment that he generates from his property.
Okay.
So it does not, and that he can receive no other money except for that increment.
Okay, follow up again. And is this something that's standard in a lot of them, or is this just something unique to his particular one?
It is, my experience, this is standard.
And maybe I can help kind of give an analogy to help clarify the situation. So if we pretend that all the aldermen own property in a TIF district, let's say, Alderman Bradshaw has her parcel, you have your parcel, on and on and on and on. Alderman Keister, if you were to come, in this scenario is that you would do a project on your property, and the RDA currently says that you would only be reimbursed from the increment that is generated from your property, okay? But if there's no increment generated, then we can't pay you back, correct? Right?
Okay.
So the amendment is saying, well, we're going to tweak the terms of the RDA. Now, not only can we pay you back from increment that's generated from your property, which there isn't any right now, but if, for example, if Alderman Bradshaw's property was generating increment and we don't have an RDA with her where we have to pay her back for anything, we could use the increment that was generated from her property or the increment that was generated from Alderman Clenathan's property to help pay you back there. So that's the context of the amendment, okay, using that example. Now, whether or not it is common to utilize increment that is generated from other properties there, I've seen it done both ways. The majority of the RDAs that I do, we tend to try to make a project stand on its own 2 feet, meaning that you're limited to the increment that's generated from your property. I've certainly seen it, though, where increment all goes into a pot, and then regardless of who generates it or what, and then it's just allocated out as whoever comes and applies for it. So I can't say that it's, I've seen it both ways there, but I recommend that a community typically try to make a development stand on its own 2 feet.
Okay, one more follow-up.
Yeah, Alderman Keister.
I guess, and my thought is, if we do this and we agree to it, then the RDA is changed, and anytime he does anything, if there ain't enough money from his to do it, he can get it from somebody else. Is that correct?
Well, so again, there's a cap in this RDA.
Mhm.
So in the Sega RDA that he's only gets up to a maximum of the 175,000 plus then the reimbursement of the costs to the consultants to form the TIF. So that's all he can get. He can't go in under this RDA. He can't go and do something new, expend another $50,000, let's say, of new eligible costs and say, hey, keep giving me money from other people. That would require either a whole RDA or an additional amendment. So he's capped at.
But if he hasn't reached that cap yet, and we change this, he makes another project, then theoretically, he can come back and say, well, mine isn't generating that money, but this one over here is, so you can take it from there and give it to me. Correct? If he has another project in that district, TIF district, and we change the RDA, he would have to start another RDA for that other project?
Correct.
Okay. Now I understand, because what I don't want to do is open up a big can of worms that people do this, and then we wind up chucking money in directions that we don't need to be throwing it. And that's when I want to try and understand what we're doing.
Mr. Chair.
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. One of the questions posed to the council was what the Sega manufacturing did for all the people of Freeport. And I want you to know that I truly believe Sega is a feather in the cap to Freeport. It's one of the cleanest facilities I've ever been in. It's worldwide. They sell vending machines all over. They employ several families. I mean, hundreds of people have worked for Sega Manufacturing, including one of my neighbors, and they support their family and their children. And I think it's a wonderful facility. Now, not many business people would say, hey, city, I'm gonna do something for you and started this development to hopefully bring tax income to the city, and I'll make you a loan under this agreement at only 7% interest or whatever the initial rate was, and say, by the way, if you don't pay me back, c'est la vie. No, he wants to be paid back, and it's very simple to do an amendment and get this done and get it off our plates.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Clem.
that all sounds well and good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't think that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at an agreement that was made, an agreement that went south, an agreement that now we should pay them after let me say once again, we've abated over $337,000 worth of property tax to them. I have to tell you right up front, you know what? I'm one vote. I'm out of here in 3 meetings. Makes no difference to me. But I'm going to tell you what, guys. If you can look at this politically and put somebody else's name on there and live with it, God bless you guys for doing it.
Chair.
Yeah, Alderman McNally can.
Actually, that's kind of how the way I've been trying to look at this from day one is, because I realize with some individuals and some entities and based on recent past votes that names are a hang-up in some things. So I kind of, where I'm not where you were, and I'm not where Alderman Clem was, and I'm not where Alderman Brashaw was in regards to I see it as clear-cut this or clear-cut that. Because frankly, from the legal, from like a legal perspective, looking at the current form of the RDA, do I feel comfortable if we send in, if we just said no, forget about it, and went in and had to argue it and defend it in court? Do I think that there's good grounds for counsel to, legal counsel to argue in regards to it? Yeah, I do. Do I also see the and that's why I think why Manager Crow and Attorney Zito is saying, hey guys, this is a policy question, because the other flip side of the coin is, and again, I take names out, let's call it Smith Corp, you know, Smith Corp comes in. We've got a bunch of blank fields, undeveloped land, largely undeveloped land in here, and the city approaches Smith Corp and says, are you interested in being part of this, creating this district? And we go into an RDA. What was the intent of the city and what was the intent of Smith Corp at the time? The intent on both parties was to have reimbursable expenses and to be able to create something. And what happened in this one was actually, I mean, I wish it could have been replicated in all the rest of the TIF districts we have, because now you got Walmart out there, you got Menards out there, you got RDAs that we're doing now with other entities that out there, other manufacturing. So am I going to step into the minds of the individual in regards to out at the county, in regards to, you know, splitting the parcels, in regards to who said or what said? No, I'm kind of generally looking at it from, take names out of it. Do we want kind of our policy to be, I mean, are we going for the intent, or are we going for a gotcha? Because, hey, you did this, now we've got you on that. Like I said, I'm not exactly where you are. I'm not exactly where Alderperson Brashaw is. If I had to lean on the line as a general blank entity out there, I don't care whose their name is, I'm generally going to lean towards the, hey, let's look at what the intent was that we had here, and I think that goes more towards the amendment at this time. Is it a slam dunk either way? In my mind, no. You know, but that's generally where I'm kind of falling on this.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Glenn?
And the only other thing I'd like to say is is not one person in the past involved in this, whether it be 2 mayors, a community development director, and the county assessor, have all said, this isn't right. You're taking money from someplace else. Right here in Mr. Zito's thing, it said, if the money's not there from the increment that it's created, you don't give it to them. Pretty simple. Thank you.
Chair.
Alderman McClanahan.
That goes under the current RDA in regards to it, and that's the question of is, you know, do you just want to play hardball on it or not in regards to the current RDA? If you say, yeah, you do, then vote that way, and if you don't, then, you know, you can vote another way on it.
Okay. Does anyone else? Oh, Attorney Zito.
Benefit of the rest of the council. From a legal perspective, again, as Manager Kroll said, legally, this can be done. Okay, the amendment allows you to alter the terms of the RDA. The question ends up being for all of you, the policy decision is: do you want to? Do you want to allow for reimbursement to come from other properties within the TIF, or do you want to keep it just as currently written, where, hey, reimbursement is only coming from the actual Sega property there? So again, that's the policy question. But from a legal perspective, you can choose to alter the RDA if you want to.
Okay, Attorney Zito got a question. change it, what are the benefits there? Or are there any benefits?
I can't speak to benefits there because that's the policy decision for you guys to decide.
Let's use a better word than that, okay.
Beat around that
The outcome.
Well, I mean, I can just say that if you choose to keep it as it is, then there is, as if the property taxes continue to trend, the property value continues to trend as they have been trending, then there's not going to be any increment generated by that parcel, by the Sega parcel. So then we as a city don't make any payments to any reimbursements there. And so you've adhered to the terms of the RDA. Okay, if you do decide to amend the RDA and change it so that you can utilize increment from other properties, then you're able to make the payment on the RDA. And again, as Alderman McClenathan indicated, at that point you're kind of looking at, am I fulfilling the intent of the obligation? Again, I can't speak to the benefits because only you guys can decide whether or not it's a benefit to adhere to the terms of the RDA or that there's benefit to amending the terms to maybe as Alderman McClenathan said, adhere to an intent instead. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Alderman Clem.
could I ask another question?
Sure.
Finance Director Randy, what's your opinion on this and how much is owed?
Currently, we should have paid them a little over $113,000, and we've paid them just over $96,000. So we owe them the $16,541 that the city manager discussed. You subtract that from the total amount that's due, we still owe them another $78,619. Again, this is a policy decision of the council, and I don't have an opinion on it.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman?
I'm going to argue a point here, and I'm not going all over with it. We could pay you guys some pretty big bucks for some advice. We've turned around and asked a couple of you for advice and not got any. I've got one, that's a policy decision. That may be fine to say that, Attorney Zito, but we pay you a whole bunch of money to tell us what's right. I appreciate your input on this. It means a lot. I think we should take a look at the exact, all I asked for was the first piece of paper that says, here's what we owe, here's what we do, here's what we need to do, so on and so forth. But also in a conversation with Mr. Kane, it was thought that he would be picking up dollars and cents on his TIF money simply because of the sales that have been generated out there with a couple new buildings. So, thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments?
Since I was the guy that opposed this, I'll make a motion to move it to council. You guys are the guys who are going to vote on it. It's all up to you.
I want to make sure that you understand the person who moves it to council cannot vote against it by Robert's.
Then I won't vote to move it to council.
I'd like to make a motion to move it to the next scheduled council meeting.
Okay, the motion's been made by Alderman Clem? No,
Bradshaw.
Alderman Bradshaw, because I will be here. Do we have a second?
Second.
Hey, Alderman Beverly had seconded. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so like we have,
Why don't we go ahead and take a roll call on that since it's not,
Okay.
I can't tell by the actual voices.
That's fine. Is the motion to move forward for discussion or move forward for approval or what?
It'd be to move forward to the, for first reading,
Ordinance.
next scheduled council meeting.
Amendment.
Okay. Alderpersons Ross,
aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Busker is absent, Brashaw,
Aye.
Keister,
No?
Berberet,
Aye.
Clem,
No.
and McClanathan.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2.
we have, any other, bit, yeah, public comment. Okay, do we have any public comments tonight? Either agenda or non-agenda? Go ahead, Tommy.
On the 10th of April, the Wayne Clinic is going to have an open house at 3 to 6 at the Freeport Memorial Hospital.
It's for what, Tommy?
It's at Freeport Memorial Hospital, first floor. The Wayne Clinic at Freeport Memorial Hospital.
I think he's saying the vein clinic.
And you're welcome to come, Joey. They're going to have finger food, wine, and all the stuff they're going to have. So.
Thank you for the invitation, Tommy.
Okay, if we have, any other, public comments, I move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion made by, Alderman Keiser, seconded by, Alderperson, Bradshaw. Aye. Yeah. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays? Okay, here we go again. Oh, gee. Man.
Yeah, well, they don't want,
Yeah.
they don't want to